In the previous video, we looked at the value. No, we didn't. There's no value. In a previous video, we looked at why people contribute to a social media platform. And that focused on one aspect of users on social media, contributors. But there's another big group, probably even larger group, that we haven't talked about. That's the idea of lurkers. So what is a lurker? A lurker is someone who does not actively participate or contribute to a social media site. And evidence suggests that there's a lot of them, right? So that these people, what they do is they go and they consume information on social media. They watch, they read, whatever, depending on the platform, but they're not contributing actively themselves. They're not making posts, not posting videos, what have you. How many lurkers are there on social media? The answer is a lot. Nielsen research that's a little bit dated, but I still think quite insightful, suggests that there's this 99-1 rule that says 90% of users on a social media site are going to be lurkers. That means they're going to read or observe and not contribute. 9% of the users are going to contribute to your social media site from time to time, and only 1% are going to be your active users contributing a lot of the contributions to your site. So that means lurking is quite big, right? We could say it's 90% of people. We need to understand maybe what do we do with them as a marketing analyst? Question that I have when I think about this 99-1 rule is that really the correct breakdown? And do I care if it's not? So do I worry if I get this 90% estimate of lurkers wrong? Because one can readily find other estimates if you just go out there looking, not very hard. You can find estimates that 98% of people are lurkers, maybe it's 70%, maybe you can get numbers as low as 55% of people that are lurkers. Now, these wide range of estimates that you're going to find are rarely held up to super intense scrutiny to try and figure out, what is the real prevalence of lurkers. But a recently referee paper in computer science comes out and says, well, it's probably not 90% anymore. Let's go with 75%. Okay, so that's still a big number. I'd say that it's not as important that we care about the exact prevalence of lurkers, but I think it is important to say we do need to take into account that lurking matters, and we need to understand what impact it might have in any analysis that we might kind of do using social media data. So I'm going to focus the rest of this clip on trying to understand what the marketing value of lurkers might be. In the course readings, I think there's a discussion of trying to characterize them and who they might be. I'm going to be more interested in, okay, they're out there. Do they have value? Do we need to worry about them if I want to do some kind of social media analytics for marketing? So what's the marketing value of these guys potentially? The first thing you could think about is that, well, maybe they're just low value and we don't need to care about them, right? They're not contributing on social media. Maybe they're just not important. Maybe they're not reacting to social media. It's more nuanced than that because they are still reading through the content on social media, and they may be making decisions based on what they see on these sites, what videos they watch, what tweets they read, what Instagram posts they see. So they still might go out and buy something, or it might change their perception of a brand, but they're just not going to contribute online about it and kind of tell you that that's what's happened. And these decisions, the fact that a lurker might purchase elsewhere or might change their perception, still going to matter if you want to kind of measure things about social media and its impact on your brand in terms of sales, perception, etc. Now, this paper that in the required readings by Chen and friends published in 2019, they're going to make a distinction and say there's at least two different types of lurkers we have to worry about. And I agree with them. there's a passive lurker who absorbs content, and that's it, right? They just read or watch, etc., and they don't talk about it with anybody. And then there's an active lurker, which we could also call a diffuser, who reads, watches, whatever on social media, and then transmits information to other people. And you can think, you might worry about, okay, how are they transmitting that information? You can think of it as I watch a video on YouTube and I don't react to it. I don't contribute to YouTube or anything. I don't go and buy the product from like the clip from a link provided to me on YouTube. But instead, a couple of days later, I might go tell somebody that I watched this clip and I think this product's really cool and maybe I'm going to buy it. So I transmitted information. I'm a lurker, but I transmitted information to other people, which also might change their decisions or update their brand perceptions. So there's marketing value there as well. So let's think of these one by one. What is the marketing value of these active lurkers? Be more precise than what I said before. So active lurkers transmit information to other people. So I think there's two ways that these guys can potentially generate marketing value. First is that this information transmission mechanism, right? That even though they're not reacting and posting anything in any way on social media to share information on social media, they're potentially still transmitting information to other people offline, right? They might be sharing information with other people. The really simple example I gave you before, I watched that video, I didn't post anything about it, but I went and told my friend. Now that friend might go and tell other friends and so on. So there might actually be a chain of value created where we're changing brand perceptions and potentially triggering some purchases because I did watch or absorb some content on social media. That's the first bit of value lurkers might give you. Second bit is there's value in their own decisions. So they didn't just talk to people. They may have also made purchases, changed their own brand perceptions, clicked onto a website about the product they viewed, but they just haven't done it related to what they consumed. So you can't track that, right? You might not be able to see that in a separate internet session on my phone, or maybe 3 weeks later, I go through and do something on social. I go and do something about the product that I saw on social media. So there is, again, but it might happen if I did view something. I might use what I viewed to make my decision later, and potentially I might buy something, but it's just hard to track because I didn't write about it anywhere. So that's important. There is marketing value in active lurkers from these two sources. The fact that they're potentially generating this diffusion, and they're also, using what they consume to update their own decisions. With passive lurkers, they don't share information, right? They just read content and kind of keep it to themselves. And in a way, I think this is how I like to think of myself online. I don't post a lot, and I don't really share information a lot, but I absorb it, and potentially I use it. So then, they're going to potentially make their own decisions, and they're going to make these decisions potentially still based on what they observed online, but it might just be hard for you to see it. So it's going to be hard for you to quantify it potentially. So an example might be that I might see a bunch of positive movie reviews on Twitter about a recent movie, and then I might go and see the movie, but I might not contribute back to Twitter that I went to go and see it or anywhere else. So you just have no idea that I'm engaging in kind of taking information about movies from social media and using it for my purchase decisions. Could also be that I see an ad on Facebook or Instagram, and instead of clicking on the ad and going through and making purchases, ideally on the same device that I saw the ad, that I take the information that I saw maybe at a future point in time and on a different device, so it's really hard for you to track, and I might go and buy the product on the website, not using any link provided to me from the ad. So again, these passive lurkers do have value, right? So they're important to us as marketing analysts to understand that they're out there and they're potentially contributing some value that we need to understand. Again, I think a lot of the time when I talk about the value of lurkers, I focus on the idea of purchase. And purchase might not be the only thing we care about as a marketing analyst. We might care about brand perceptions, brand recall, clicks on a website, etc. But everything I've said, I think, goes through kind of perfectly, no matter what your metric you want to follow is. So now that lurkers are out there and they're potentially valuable to us, there's, to me, two things we need to worry about or kind of try and act upon somehow. If I'm the owner or like the platform, the social media platform, I might want to find a way of engaging lurkers on my social media website. So I'm going to call it de-lurking. I'm going to try and de-lurk them and turn them into active contributors. One thing I might want to understand. Second thing I want to understand is there any possible way that I can track their behavior and maybe measure the effect of lurkers kind of in aggregate with everybody else, or maybe by themselves? Let's think about that a little. So first, solutions to lurking if you're a social media platform owner. And if you want to de-lurk these people and get them engaged, I guess the first thing you need to figure out is why they might be lurking. And I think there's three dominant reasons for that. Maybe they can be summarized as one, but here's three explanations that I think people come up with, and they say, well, I just read, I don't contribute. People will say, well, browsing is enough for me. I learn what I need, and I don't feel the need to contribute back. Second reason might be, well, by just reading and not contributing back, I'm getting some control of my privacy, right? I'm not revealing even more information about myself to a social media platform. And I value my privacy, so I don't want to reveal that information. Another reason I might lurk is because I'm worried about my reputation. I'm somewhat anxious about how people might perceive what I post, because once it's there forever. Cool. Suppose those are the only three reasons. There are others, and I'm happy to talk about what other reasons might be in a discussion section. Question might then be, okay, if these are the reasons, how can we get them, how can we engage them on our social media platform? And there's two, I think, that are interesting. One that's being quite recent, which is the idea of social media platforms making some of their posts not permanent, right? So this is the rise of like Instagram stories or Twitter's fleets, which are, I think, quite new, like end of 2020, beginning of 2021. So the idea behind both of these things is you write or record or post a photo of something online, and then in a day, it disappears, and there's no trace of that thing being made available. The idea here is you're trying to take the lurkers and turn them into contributors by kind of, I hope, taking away some of their concerns about why they don't want to post, right? Now you're saying, well, you can hope the consumer might think that there's more privacy if I'm posting these Instagram stories as opposed to having it there forever. It might alleviate some of these reputational or anxiety matters, knowing that their posts are not there forever, and so on. Another way to try and engage people and turn lurkers maybe a little bit more into contributors, right? Or even differently, trying to take people from being passive lurkers maybe to active, so at least they're diffusing information if they're not contributing, might be giving people repeated interaction with the same content. So the idea being that you're seeing that maybe many of your friends are retweeting the same original tweet. And that repeated kind of interaction, so I see that there's multiple people retweeting it, or you tell me that might encourage me as an active lurker to want to spread the information. And I think the argument in the Chen 2019 paper here is kind of interesting as to why that might be the case. Because if I'm a passive lurker, potentially, I have less of a need for uniqueness and kind of diffusing information. So I'm an original content creator. Sometimes when I post stuff, I want to be somewhat unique and original, and I value originality. But if I'm a normal contributor, or definitely if I'm a passive lurker, there might be an idea that seeing the same thing, kind of seeing repeated content, maybe even the exact same thing over and over, will make me want to engage with it somehow. Maybe I might become a contributor and write something or retweet it, and I'm some kind of a contributor. Or it might make me, having seen that retweet many, many times, or seen many of my friends have retweeted it, I might be more likely to go in and talk about it in an offline environment as well. So the social media site, when I look around, I think these two things might be ways that the platforms are trying to engage with lurkers somewhat. If you're an analyst, what can you do? You've now learned that lurkers are out there, and you want to try and measure their impact. It's hard. So there's two situations. First is if you're using data on individual behavior from the social media platform potentially as your only data set. So think of it as, what's a good example? Suppose you run an ad campaign on Instagram and you want to evaluate the effectiveness of the ad campaign. And the only data you have are what Instagram spits back out at you as like impacts and clicks and purchases based on the ad. In that case, I'm going to argue you can't really do much to measure the impact of lurkers, because all you're going to see from the ad campaign stats, you're going to see maybe who saw it and you're going to see how many people saw the ad. Ideally, you'd see who saw it so you could track them a little. Who clicked on it, and who kind of took that click the whole way through to some other kind of interesting metrics like purchase. All right, so did I click on the ad and then did I buy anything? So what this means is that if you're using data on your ad campaign from Instagram, you can quantitatively assess this kind of purchase funnel for everyone who engages with the ad, right? So you see to click to the next thing. What you can't do is you can't measure whether a lurker who might have seen the ad, right? Because remember, they're absorbing the content, they're looking, whether they maybe bought it due to another channel, right? Because that might be an effect of your ad, right? You generated purchase via this lurker guy, but he didn't click through the way that you can quantify. That guy might also pass on the information from the ad he saw to someone else, and that person might make a purchase later. Can't assess that. So if you're dealing with data just from the platform, where you maybe run the ad, you're not going to be able to do much to measure the impact of lurkers on, your company, be it, like in my example, sales. Is this a horrible, horrible thing? Most people probably say it's okay, I think the main point is that you have to at least acknowledge the fact that you can't measure lurkers in this kind of situation, and there's still a lot of them, so you can't add value and kind of quantify what's going on to maybe a large proportion of the population. Your analysis is still going to have value because you're going to be able to say something about the effect on, in this case, sales or clicks onto your ad for people that do engage in your platform or with the ad. Other way you might be doing your analysis is that you might have aggregates on social media, from some social media site, and you might have an aggregate outcome variable. So think of this as you have like the volume of tweets about your product. Let's, for example, call that a movie. So you have the volume of tweets about your movie. And suppose you have the sentiment as well. So you know how positive or negative the attitude online is about your movie. And you have an aggregate outcome that you're interested in. So you have like daily sales, like daily box office revenue or daily ticket sales of your movie. I'd say that the presence of lurkers and trying to quantify their effects, in a way, they're baked into the analysis when you try and relate daily sales to total tweet volume and sentiment. Why is this the case? Well, the aggregation idea, because we don't have individual level data now, we just have total ticket sales and total volume and total sentiment potentially. Let's ignore the sentiment part. Just say we have box office, receipts, or ticket sales, and volume of tweets. Anyone who's seen a tweet might respond to the content. So then when I see higher tweets and I see higher sales, and you think there's a causal argument linking the tweets to the sales, the increase in sales could have come from really anybody. It could have become from someone who posted an original tweet, could have been from someone who retweeted, could have been from an active lurker, could have been from someone else who talked to the active lurker, and that guy said, hey, I saw these great tweets about this movie, you should go see it, and they do. Or it could be from the passive lurker who just saw some tweets about the movie and went to go see it. Importantly, because you're dealing with aggregates, you're not going to be able to tell which of these situations it is. You're just going to be able to see that there's a link between, hopefully causal, if you can make that claim, between tweet volume and sales. And so you're going to see this kind of aggregate relationship. And depending on the question we want to answer, this relationship between aggregate sales, which comes from aggregate sales and volume of tweets coming from any of these people, be it content creators, lurkers, or someone else, maybe we don't care. Right? We just want to see whether more of Twitter volume is giving me more sales. Then as I said, then we've kind of got lurker effects in there, because lurker effects might be generating part of these aggregates, and that's good. You can kind of, you're not quantifying the effect of lurkers per se, but you're saying, look, there are lurkers out there and they're interacting in a way that may be affecting my aggregate volume. So I'm getting some kind of aggregate averaged effect somehow. Now, the idea of this aggregate thing, just because I've told you can measure the effect of lurkers somehow, or at least incorporate them, don't now think this is going to be the be all and end all of your analysis, because linking aggregate sales to aggregate tweets or any other kind of relationship here is potentially going to have some really some other serious analytic problems we're going to worry about, to kind of worry about whether that relationship is going to be real or not. Is there a causal link? We're going to get to that in the future. But just to say, if you do deal with aggregates, you somehow got lurker effects integrated into your analysis in some way, but you can't really quantify it and say like X% of that lift is from lurkers. You're just going to say this could be from a bunch of people.